My name is Mary Song. Some of you know me. I've been around the center for many, many, many years. And today I'm going to be giving a talk about creativity during times of crises. Now that can be personal crises, social crises, political crises, global crises, spiritual crises. So Zen practitioner and author Natalie Goldberg, some of you may be fans of Natalie, she has said creativity exists in the present moment. You can't find it anywhere else. I'll say that again. Creativity exists in the present moment. You can't find it anywhere else. And so, in my words, during this time of crisis, there may be a magnetic pull to be here now. Thank you, Ram Dass, for that. This was the case for me when I was a very lonely and devastated teenager. So I want to tell you a little story. I was a misfit. Now you might think, oh, well, we get over that, don't we? But if you've been a misfit, you don't fit in, you think maybe you don't belong, and there's nowhere to go, nowhere to turn, and no wise elders to discuss it with you. It's very painful. I wondered, am I going to be one of those ones who decides to end life early? It's so painful. It's so excruciating. There's no one to talk to. There's no one who gives advice. I even heard of a girl in my neighborhood who had hanged herself. I didn't know her well, but the story of her hanging herself was shocking to me. My pain was so great, but something happened for me. I felt that magnetic pull to creativity. And in those hours alone at night, I'd often stay up all night, I reached for the guitar. I had that same guitar hanging on the back wall. You can't see right now, and I played guitar, music. I wrote songs. I played the songs. I'd record the songs. I'd play them back. And I picked up the pen and I began writing. I wrote poems. I wrote songs, like I said. I wrote stories. And I started writing a whole novel. I could do this night after night, writing more pages of my novel. I was 16 years old. And then a girl that I knew shot herself in the chest. You might think, wow, where did you grow up? This was small town Iowa. She shot herself in the chest. Somehow she lived. Even though she was alone in a car on a country road, hoping not to be found. That's how serious her pain was. But she was found, and she was brought back to life. And I wanted more than anything to help her see something to live for. And I did not know what it was. What do you live for? So I started writing letters and notes to her, talking to her, and I came up with this idea: live for the dawn. Whatever, I don't know what it is, but live for the dawn. There's a dawn. I didn't know anything about awakening, but I thought this might be a good idea, to live for the dawn. And the only spiritual book around the house was the Bible, which I did not ordinarily read, but I began, looking through it. What could I say to her? How can I help? And I'd find passages that mentioned the dawn and passages about shining a light in a dark place. And that really spoke to me. Yes, I want to be one holding a light in a dark place. I wanted to help. And it did help. I think it helped both of us, actually. But this personal crisis that I had was also taking me into the spiritual crisis. What is there to live for? Why am I here? What's this all about? And then this book came into my life. Can you all see that? Kind of going in and out. Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. This edition came out in 1971. It was crucial for me that it landed in my hands, and in some of your hands too, I'm sure, because for a couple of reasons. One is that I was dabbling with creativity. I was letting creativity help me to write, to sing, to play guitar, to think creatively, to be with people creatively. And so I looked at what Hermann Hesse had done. He used his imagination, his creativity to write this story. It's fiction. I love that, because that fiction told a truth that I needed to hear. I needed to read about this. It spoke about enlightenment, whatever that was. It showed a character on a journey. You can read it now. I recently reread it probably for the 5th time. It's always fresh and new. A character in India on a journey to achieve or to find this thing called enlightenment. The character actually comes in contact with the Buddha and leaves the Buddha and goes on his own to finally awaken. So I thought, okay, then perhaps I'm on a journey to achieve this wisdom, this thing, this unknowing. I didn't know the word unknowing yet, but I know it now. So since that journey with Hermann Hesse into Siddhartha, my own journey brought me into making choices for creativity, writing, photography, music, filmmaking, audio production, everything that I was choosing. I had a chance to choose. I'm going to go the creative route. That's what I want. And you know, creativity can be, it's much more than that product of a painter's painting. It's creative teaching. It's creative listening. It's creative gardening, creative adventuring, creative living. And I'm hoping that you all are going to add to this list when we get to the discussion part. Creativity is constant. It's everywhere. It's available. I was recently reading a discourse by Osho. Here's the book. I Say Unto You, Volume 1. And I noticed this passage in the book really stuck with me. He says, every day you get a certain quantity of spiritual energy, daily nourishment. With that energy, you can do destruction or creation. If you do destruction, then you will be misusing it. That will be violence or violation. If you use it in a creative way, it will become your path towards God. God's energy that goes on showering you is what Jesus calls the daily bread. This is according to Osho. If this energy is not properly used, but is squandered in useless and destructive activities, then God goes on giving and you go on throwing it away, not knowing what you are throwing away. So that just resonated with me. And it's been helpful for me during these times of global crises, the pandemic, climate change, political and social injustice. It's all happening right now. Wars, starvation. When I wake up in the morning, do I choose creativity or do I choose destruction? And that includes negative thinking. Will I choose negative thinking, blaming, throwing fuel on the fire? Or will I look for creative ways to express my desire for peace, for justice? Out of these crises, creativity arises. In my view, it's there always. But sometimes in a personal whatever, you can see it arising, that constant. We know it when we arrive in the present moment. So for some time in my own life, the question has been, how do I align my three great loves: creativity, compassion, and communication, to be of service to others? So about a year ago, it was approaching my 65th birthday. And I thought, well, how can I like to celebrate actually. I look for any opportunity to celebrate your birthday, my birthday, the cat's birthday, the birthday of my car, or whatever. Let's all celebrate. And I thought, what can I do that would be creative? Not just eat a cake and sing happy birthday, but something else. And so because I use Facebook quite often, I decided, okay, I'm going to do a Facebook autobiography for 30 days leading up to that one day. And each day I'll make a post, and I will draw photographs together, because if you could see my studio, you would see I have photographs scattered everywhere, writing and all kinds of things. I'm going to pull together for each post one photograph or several in a panel, and then put some words with it to tell a story. Not long, just a little bit. And so each day I created this and I posted it, and I had a small following looking at it and commenting, and they would also say things about their lives. And as I was doing this in the process of it, I began to see that, my personal story that I'm telling is a product of my imagination. And isn't that marvelous? It's my imagination. Isn't that a miracle? So if I pull together these pictures and these words, I'm telling a story, yeah. But if I take these other pictures and these words, it's a different story. Both true, both fiction. Fiction. Somehow the story of I is a work of fiction, and I thank the goddess for that. I mean, I love fiction. I'm a fiction writer. My degree is in fiction, and to see the fiction of my own life has not been devastating, actually, maybe to the ego. By the way, a note I wrote myself: it is always a time of crisis for the small self when awakening is near. In this case, though, it was joyful, liberating, and I'd like to say that when the story arises and you see it as this beautiful creative act, you know it's not your true self, but it's some sort of beautiful garden. So then the idea came to me, coming out of this flow of creativity: spiritual writing workshops, using creative writing, fiction, creative nonfiction, poetry, to loosen the grip on that story of I. This is what happened to me. This is who I am. To start to loosen that and let it dissipate, perhaps, and to celebrate it for the miracle it is. And so I wrote a proposal for the board at the Center for Sacred Sciences. They approved of it, and I began to offer these workshops at the center so that we could explore this together, and to also look at afflicted emotions and to watch them using creative writing, how they transform, how they unfold, how they liberate. So I use a lot of poetry in these workshops. That some of you here, I'm not sure who all is here, you've worked with me on this, but I wanted to give the greater center audience an idea of what we do. And so I am prepared here to read a poem that I like to use in these workshops. And then I will be asking two people, that will be Sherry and Vip, to give their responses. They both worked with me in a workshop where we did this poem, and I asked them in advance to have their response ready. I want you to keep in mind that I gave them only 3 to 4 minutes to write their response to this poem. It's not a response, actually. It's a flow of creativity where we take the first line of the poem and we write our own poem. And in this particular case, I recall that I interrupted them in their flow and interjected certain lines, had them do repetition and so on. So I wanted to read the poem and have them present what they did, okay? So you can see the remarkable creativity that can happen when we bypass that critical mind that says, I cannot do this, I am not creative. I hear this often, I'm not creative. And then the miracle is that the creativity comes pouring through. So let me take a drink of water here. This poem, many of you know it. It's by Hafiz, a Persian poet of the 14th century. I know the way you can get, by Hafiz. I know the way you can get when you have not had a drink of love. Your face hardens, your sweet muscles cramp. Children become concerned about a strange look that appears in your eyes, which even begins to worry your own mirror and nose. Squirrels and birds sense your sadness and call an important conference in a tall tree. They decide which code to chant to help your mind and soul. Even angels fear that brand of madness that arrays itself against the world and throws sharp stones and spears into the innocent and into oneself. Oh, I know the way you can get if you have not been out drinking love. You might rip apart every sentence your friends and teachers say, looking for hidden clauses. You might weigh every word on a scale like a dead fish. You might pull out a ruler to measure from every angle in your darkness the beautiful dimensions of a heart you once trusted. I know the way you can get if you have not had a drink from love's hands. That is why the great ones speak of the vital need to keep remembering God, so that you will come to know and see her as being so playful and wanting, just wanting to help. That is why Hafiz says, bring your cup near me, for I am a sweet old vagabond. For I am a sweet old vagabond with an infinite leaking barrel of light and laughter and truth that the beloved has tied to my back. Dear one, indeed, please bring your heart near me, for all I care about is quenching your thirst for freedom. All a sane person can ever care about is giving love. Okay, so I'd like to call on Sherry. Sherry's up first. Hello, Sherry, are you there?
I know the way you can get when you practice in the morning on the treadmill and the bicycle, noticing awareness. It feels so sweet to be so aware so much of the time you're at workout. And then suddenly it's 9 p.m. and you forgot all about being aware. Thoughts crowded your head like a feather stuffed into a pillow, and you didn't think of it once or even set your alarm so you'd remember. You just forgot the whole rest of the day, from noon to 9. How annoying. How could you? But good old Salvador Poe says, that doesn't matter at all. You'll just remember when you remember, and that's plenty good enough. And you know that's true. That is why Sherry says, there's no need to worry about it, and definitely no need to kick yourself around the block over it. And although you get annoyed with those mystics a lot of these days, they're so sure of themselves and they all say pretty much the same damn thing. But the fact is, you trust most of them a lot more than you do yourself on some things, like how this being aware business works. I know the way you can get when you actually let go and begin to trust them and yourself, how you relax and sink into being aware of being aware. How sweet it is when that happens. You know how to do that. Nobody needs to tell you how. And as John Sherman says, it's just so simple. Just look at yourself. You can't do it wrong. Just look, and the light comes in and does the rest of the work. La la, there is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. Bless you, Leonard.
Oh, bless you, Sherry. That's so wonderful. I just want to repeat, Sherry, um, uh, you wrote this fabulous piece in 3 to 4 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
It's just amazing to me. 3 to 4 minutes. It sounds like she took, weeks to write this and edit and on, think it over. No, in the workshop, you wrote it, you read it, and I loved it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, and next it's Vip. Vip also heard the same poem. And I'll point out that when it comes to the part that says Hafiz says, I asked the writer to insert their own name. That's why Sherry says. We give ourselves permission, huh? So let's hear what Vip wrote.
Okay. I know the way you can get when fear moves into your heart. I know that feeling of constriction and contraction, not the sweet kind that pushes blood or brings forth new life, but that which heralds evasiveness and shrinking from what is before you. I know it feels involuntary and automatic and reflexive, but you don't need to go to excuses and explanations. You don't need to apologize for some imagined weakness. Oh, I know the way you can get when fear comes creeping into your heart like some cat burglar determined to steal your equanimity. I know the tendency is to shutter all your blinds, kill the lights, hunkering down in a darkness that you believe might save you. When has that strategy ever worked, oh dear one? Keep your lamps burning for Goddess's sake. Oh, I know the way we can all get when we witness some ill-chosen tyrant take hold of our fragile but functioning societal fabric. That is why Vip says, lights on for safety, love outpouring for sanity, and goodbye, fear. You were only a stand-in. Love, come in disguise to test the workings of our hearts. You show yourself now in your own true and beautiful form.
Oh, thank you, Vip. And Vip, I think you also submitted that to the center newsletter, and it was published there. Yes, and so you know, it's a wonderful demonstration of just being in that flow of creativity, taking a spark from Hafiz and letting the poem come through you without criticizing yourself and getting in your own way. So in the workshops, I have a rule that the pen starts and it does not stop. And I kind of walk around the school watching pencils. And I don't really have a Zen stick or anything, but it's a psychological thing. It keeps us going and it bypasses that criticism and that feeling of not good enough and so on. So every single time this beautiful creativity arises, it's not me, it's just that flow, being in that flow of creative energy, supporting it, welcoming it, and embracing it. Now, out of all of that creative energy, we've been doing it for about a year now at the center. I've had various groups going. Donna, Deborah, and Maura Scanlon put their efforts into creating a writing art exhibit at the center, using the writings that come out of the workshops and art pieces that could go with them and illustrate. And they had that exhibit all ready to be hanged at the center when the pandemic hit and the center closed down. So I wanted to ask Donna to say something about what went into this and what was that process for you, Donna?
Thank you, Mary Song. Can you hear me okay, everybody?
Yes.
So I have been part of 4 of Mary Song's writing workshops, including Emergency, which ended this Friday. These workshops have been a creative source of coming out of years of solitude while treating and healing from blood cancer, a form of leukemia. For me, Mary Song and her workshops have been a gentle, safe way to emerge and step back into the larger world through writing and taking small steps and immersing myself back into activities that I put on hold. During Mary Song's winter workshop, she put out the idea of collecting people's writings, then creating an exhibit. She asked if anyone would like to lead. I said I would. After all, I am jumping into fires that have been smoldering for a while. After I made the commitment, I realized that I had no idea how to create a writing or art exhibit. Deborah Meadow and Maura Scanlon offered their services, which I accepted, and we became a team of co-creators as well as co-curators. It is through Deborah the name of our project came to be Out of Hiding. It was a perfect summation of 2 groups of writers, Go as Nothing and Writing into Awakening, that Mary Song was teaching during the winter months. We sent out a call for writing submissions. 17 writers submitted their beautiful writing, all fantastic, deep spiritual expressions. Some also submitted artwork to complement their writing. So all this leads to the Out of Hiding Writing Art Exhibit update. Just as Deborah, Maura, and I, just as Mary Song was saying, we're preparing to hang the show. The Center for Sacred Sciences closed its doors, honoring the COVID-19 pandemic guidelines for social distancing. The project was put on hold for a few weeks, waiting for the doors to reopen, which is not happening for a while longer. Deborah offered a solution so that we can still have the Out of Hiding writing and art exhibit available for viewing. She suggested having a virtual online exhibition of writers' work, which everyone can access through the CSS website. Deborah has taken the lead and is working directly with Tom McFarland to create a page on the center's website where we can go view and read all the submitted writings. This is a work in progress, so there is no deadline for the opening date yet. We will make an announcement when we know. However, we have sent out an email to all 17 writers requesting additional artwork to include. The deadline for receiving photographs of art is Friday, June 12th. The art submissions can be emailed to Deborah, but Mara and I will accept submissions, then forward them on to Deborah. It has been a joy and an honor working on this project with Mara and Deborah. I'm so thankful to the writers for their generous sharing. And I'm especially grateful to Mary Song for being my spiritual and writing teacher.
Thank you. Thank you, Donna. And I'm grateful for all of you putting that energy into that. I forgot that I had that vision, but I think it belongs to all of us. Vision kind of happens, and if I don't notice it, someone else notices it. You mentioned Out of Hiding as the title, and we did a workshop all around coming out of hiding, which has been very important in my life. And coming out of it to where? Into that dawn, for me, the dawn of creativity. Creativity has led me with compassion and kindness. And to share that, I think for all of us is a service to this world. So you mentioned the one that we just ended, Emerging Through Emergency. Now this idea came to me just after the stay-at-home order came here in Oregon. The pandemic hit, we got the orders to stay at home, and an idea dropped in my mind. So at this point in my life, I've been, trying to really tune into intuition. What is it saying to do? And so I thought, okay, I said I would never be an online teacher because I love to be in the room with people and look at their faces. I've said it again and again, I won't do it. But this was the only way to do it now. So I said, okay, then it has to be this way. I will learn to do Zoom, and I will create a workshop called Emerging Through Emergency or Crisis, however you want to look at that. And during this time, for the past 10 weeks, we kept pandemic journals. Now that doesn't mean just writing about the detail of the numbers of cases and the numbers of death, but also what's happening inside us, within us, in our lives, and other creative stirrings that we have on a daily basis. We also did other creative assignments, and then each week we met on Zoom, and we shared things. And we just ended on Friday, this group, and it felt extraordinarily intimate. So it showed me that I was wrong about being online as a teacher. It showed me that the magic is still there and that it can work. So thank you everybody that participated in that demonstration. I'm going to pose a question now and open this up for discussion. My question to all of you is, during this time of pandemic, with social distancing and the uncertainty, yes, we know we're always uncertain. We never know what's going to happen. But things are disrupted. Right now, we see violence erupting, social injustice, so much is happening. During all of these times, how has creativity arisen in you? And did stay-at-home orders hinder or help your creativity? So, Tom, if we could just have people raise hands. I just want to hear some reports, actually. I know there's so many artists out there, for example, painters, sculptors, writers, poets, gardeners. I mean, there's so many ways to be creative. What has this been like for you during this time with your creativity?
Okay, funny, I was going to talk about this anyway today, but very briefly, but it happened to me yesterday. And it's for me, it's a perfect kind of a showering of how the unknown comes into a very simple action. I take walks every day when I can. And one of the trails that I take is around the 11th and in all Midtown and around the library. I go to the library every day. And I sit there for a bit with the statues, and today and yesterday I went and I walked past a man who reminded me of the Haziz poem, The Vagabond, because I know him from the library, the main library when it was open. He would be there as much as I was there, which is probably almost daily. And I always looked at him he's a big man with a big beard, and it would be easy to be frightened of him, but it's also was really easy to not be frightened, but his eyes were really warm. And so anyway, I never talked to him, but I heard him ask questions of other people. And so I felt like I got to know him, even though we'd never spoke or really acknowledged anything. I make friends like that. And so yesterday when I saw him for the first time in a long time, sitting there by the statue, which is where I was going to sit. And previous to that, I'd been mulling over the question of enough. When am I enough? And what difficulty that poses me in my life. And how it's sometimes there and sometimes isn't there. And so I walked past him, and he looked at me, and I looked at him, and we spoke for the first time. And I said, "Hi, how are you?" And he said, "Oh, I'm all right." And said, I guess I could be better. Maybe I'm okay." And he spoke with a voice that it was the kind of voice that was very personal. And so I looked at him and I said, "Well, maybe you're just fine the way you are." And I walked away. And I'd never said that. I wouldn't have said that to him, except for that moment. And when I walked away, and he smiled, oh, by the way, he smiled when I said that. And he said, "I was thinking the same thing." And I walked away, and I just about cried easily these days, but I didn't cry, but I thought about the magic of not the magic. It wasn't that, the words make things sound so whatever you want to hear them. It's not like that. It was like a feeling inside that I had touched something that was there already, kind of like, yeah, and it just came out of nowhere. And that made me know it was real. It wasn't something I was repeating. It was something that just came. And so I walked on, and that was the end of that. But I wanted to share that because it won't leave me. It's there.
That's a beautiful story. And, as you were telling the story, I kind of teared up too. I could feel it. I could see the man there in my imagination, went to work to see you and to see the man and to feel it with you. Which, just goes to show us that in every moment there is an opportunity to choose that creative way to love. Maybe we could call it love. We're just putting labels on things, right? And you recognized it. It just came to you, and he responded. I want to read just that verse again from the poem, I Know the Way You Can Get, because it also, Barbara, touched me so much. That is why Hafiz says, "Bring your cup near me, for I am a sweet old vagabond." We don't know what that vagabond's going to look like. We might think, "Oh, I better stay away from." But he says, "For I am a sweet old vagabond with an infinite leaking barrel." You can just see that barrel of light and laughter and truth the beloved has tied to me. Barbara.
Thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you. Hi, Sheila and Mike.
Hi,
Hi,
Mary
Mary
Song.
Song.
There you are. Hi.
Creativity. I so appreciate your talk because this is something that has flowed through me consciously for many decades, and at some points I've labeled myself as an artist among my many incarnations. But to your question about
You painted this.
the impact on the pandemic and creativity, it's a little hard to break down because creativity often rises and ebbs within me over time. But a strange thing, I made I guess a slideshow movie with sound effects, having to blend them, and this is something I've never done. That happened last week, and now I'm looking at composing music, which is way out of my field, but I don't know why this burst within me. But the one comment I'd like to make is many decades ago, even before I sort of awakened to the spiritual path, I tried to look within and say, what is the nature of creativity? How can this new thing come out when I have no experience? You know, it's like leaping through an abyss. And the way I turned it then was, at least in the painting part of my artistic endeavors, I looked at myself as a brush held in a greater hand. And
Beautiful.
I think it connects all of us. As a matter of fact, increasingly, I'm in increasing awe of the creativity in the universe. It just astounds.
What else is there, right? What else is there?
Yes, and in a sense, I think there was, I can't even remember who the Sufi mystic was who talked about, when we talk about God as all powerful, all knowing, omnipresent. His term was, God isn't all powerful, he is all power. And in a sense, I could imagine that being the creativity, that the creativity is a component of God. It's not us. It's not me. I mean, I'm sorry to say that it did a lot for my ego to have artwork appreciated and purchased, but that's one of the things to let go of. But I just wanted to pass that comment on, and I've noticed it coming forth in the pandemic. But that's all I had to say. And thank you so much for all.
Wonderful report. Thank you for that. And several things came up for me. I'm so happy to hear that during this time you're being pushed to the unknown, into these new areas. You hadn't thought of doing this part before. You didn't know anything about this, and now you're doing it. And, for me, I think I always had a misconception growing up that when you reach 65, well, then, it's over, right? You sit around, but for me, it's been more busy, more creativity, more happening, more things to play with, the unknown and so on. And part of it is being willing to be a beginner. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to do Zoom, and now I have to learn. I'm learning this, I'm learning that. And that just enlivens me. So I think it's true that we deprive ourselves sometimes because we think we're not good enough. I mean, I can't be a painter. I don't know how to paint or anything. I can't draw a face but I tell you, when I was 5 years old, I loved finger painting. Oh boy.
Yeah.
Why don't I try that? So, I think we do limit ourselves, and we're afraid of that beginner's mind. Someone's going to judge. Oh, what's she doing? But, to be an artist of life, I'm going to devote my life to creativity and service to others and just see what does come through. And for me, as I was saying, that it's an alignment. It's like, for me, a holy trinity. if I may use that expression, the creativity, the communication, and the compassion. And when that lines up, I have come out of hiding. I come out of hiding, and I'm 66 years old now, and it's a beautiful thing. And energy is just flowing. I don't feel like I did that. Something, yes. The
We
gift,
don't do anything,
yes, I just received the gift
right?
in my fictional story.
But that's the beauty. As you mentioned earlier, I've also come to the conclusion that every aspect of my life, all of us, I believe, is imaginary. We construct our imaginary worlds, and that's not to denigrate it, but it's the mind labeling, putting things together, judging, and that can be good, but I think recognizing it has given me a certain amount of freedom. And in a sense, that's creative. So if we apply creativity, maybe we can imagine our lives and thus create them any way we want.
Or let them be created in service,
Right.
letting compassion lead the way. Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just to reiterate, sometimes as spiritual practitioners, we think, oh yeah, I don't exist, and this whole story of me is made up, and I got to get rid of it. I want to get rid of it. And what I'm doing is a different approach. It's like I'm celebrating it. I know it's not me, but my goodness, neither is that movie I just watched last night. But I have this book over here. Somebody made that up. Herman Hesse made it up.
Yeah.
But we love that, don't we?
Yes.
So I made up a story called Me, and that's not who I am. That's not my true self, but it's a narration that kind of travels along this way and that way. And yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
You both. Thank you. Hi, Jude.
Hi, Mary Sung. Thank you so much for your presentation on creativity. It really got me thinking. I regret not having been able to join your writing class because I've always been a prolific journalist. Just by that, I mean journaling for myself. And I have felt during this quarantine period a great desire to use my hands creatively. I've always sewed or done needlepoint, or I found actually a spiritual practice by doing something called sashiko, which is, it's an indigo fabric and there's a pattern printed on it and you have to do the exact stitch. Wow. So the spiritual dimension of that for me has been, be here now. If my mind gets distracted for 1 second, I lose the pattern of that stitch. And then I have to take the whole thing out and start it again. So I just wanted to say that the pandemic has brought this creativity to fore, but also in a spiritual way. So I'm very grateful for that.
That's a great example. And at the end, you had this lovely creation, right? Mm-hmm. Which, who knows what you will do with that. It could be a gift for someone.
Yes.
But in your process of making it, it sounds as though it brought you into the present. And it was a meditation tool. So beauty is created from that. And I do hope to work with you, Jude. I have your name on my list. We'll have to talk about that for the next round of workshops.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I've been unmuted, so.
Hi.
Hi.
Mark.
I've really enjoyed this. Thank you a lot. Before making my comment, I wanted to recommend to everybody who hasn't already seen this, and to even see it again if you already have. It's an old talk, maybe 10-year-old TED talk by Elizabeth Gilbert about creativity. And that's all I'm going to say. I can't recommend this talk enough. It's actually one of like the top 10, well, it was anyway, the top TED talks. Oh, hang on. My battery's low too. I'll have to make this a little fast. So So I've been sort of lamenting during this time that I haven't gotten back to writing music. And I even thought that what with all this time, I would have done that. And what I find myself doing is sort of like finishing up stuff so I'll have space, you know, to do it, space and time. And after a fair amount of time, then it's like, you know, it's really clear at this point that the lack of time is not the reason. So, and I'm sure you can and have talked a lot about, you know, blocks to creativity or things that, you know, we allow to come up in front of what's there. So I was challenged by a couple of guys I was sort of complaining about myself, about myself to some guys in my men's group. And they said, well, dude, you know, what's up with that? Like, so they sort of challenged me to do something. So in the last couple of weeks, I decided, okay, I'm gonna just throw myself in, and I'll just, whatever, you know, if things don't get done, as is true.
Mm-hmm.
So about a year ago, a woman in our dojo, our Aikido dojo, died. She was youngish, you know, 40 around, died of cancer. And at the time, I thought, I'm going to write her a piece of music, or write a piece of music for her memorial. And I wasn't actually here for the memorial, and I didn't finish it anyway. And the contact between me and her family didn't get made. So anyway, it never got done. So I thought, you know, her anniversary is coming up in a month. I'm going to finish that piece. And I've been working really hard on it. It's almost done. But it's, I guess what I want to say is there's this weird thing where if I don't have something I'm doing it for, like being in a band and writing a piece for that will be played, other things become more important. And I don't even think in myself they really are more important, but there's something about my relationship to the world that if something doesn't press me to do it because I've got a time constraint or a thing I'm doing it for, it doesn't happen. And to me, it's a little bit sad. And I'm just making that comment that there's a lot there. And I think there's a lot in all of us. And that's the kind of thing that I allow to get in the way. And now that I've started this last 2-week process, I'm hoping that there'll be a momentum there that will push past some of that resistance or whatever it is.
Yes, I think I'm a little bit like you, Mark. I feel like I need some pressure, something that's pushing me. I mean, I feel the magnetic pull, but it's that pressure, often a time pressure, that gets me to really open up to that creative flow. And this talk is an example of that. So that it was on the calendar, it had to be postponed because I was ill. And then, you know, so the pressure of it. So here I am now, right in this very moment. This is the result of that pressure. And without it, who knows, I may never have come forward to do a talk. Like, well, let someone else, you know, they don't want to hear about it. Thoughts come and get in the way. But you know, you mentioned Elizabeth Gilbert, and I did hear her speak one time where she talked about ideas, creative ideas coming to all of us. And if you don't take the idea that comes, that idea will leave and go to someone else. I thought, well, that's a very interesting way to look at it. Did you hear that part? When she...
I think that's probably the same talk. She may say some of the same things in other talks. The main thrust of this talk is that it was about creativity and genius. And the idea that these days, anyway, a person is a genius. And people are considered to have, you know, to be special. But she says in the old days, you know, whenever that was, that's not how it was thought of. Genius is in the air. Genius is in the world. God is the genius. And we become temporarily, or maybe for our whole life, receptacles and conveyors of that genius. It's not us. And her main reason for giving the talk is that there's a lot of pressure people put on themselves, especially once you've had some success, to now you have to be a genius. And she says that the pressure we put on ourselves to either do better than we've done before, or even to compete in the art world, is one of the things that keeps creativity from happening more. And she said it was true in her life, and I think it's true in my life. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we have an intention that we're going to do something. Like, I want to write a science fiction novel. And so it's like occupying me. I want to write a science fiction novel. And years keep going by, and gosh, I haven't really done it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do my science fiction. Now I've got time, I'm going to do it. But with that, we're kind of stopping the flow of ideas. Maybe what I was really called to do was some kind of needlepoint stitching where I come into the present moment and create this thing. Or maybe if I hadn't dwelled in this idea of writing a science fiction novel, I may have written a book of short stories. So we do get swamped with these ideas. Oh, this is it. And then we're disappointed in ourselves for not doing it. So when I teach writing courses, college level courses in creative writing, fiction, for example, I tell the students on the first day, sweep it all aside. I don't want to read your chapters of that science fiction novel. Let's start now and see what grows out of this moment. That was some advice given to me a long time ago, and I think it's pretty valuable. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
I just had a couple of little things and quotes from one of my main teachers, Kurska.
Yes.
One is the story that somebody went and interviewed about 5 of the outstanding scientists, including Albert Einstein, at one point about their theories and their breakthroughs, asked them, how they had gotten those, how those creative things had come. And for all of them, in one way or another, they were doing something else.
Yes.
They weren't even thinking about this at the time. It just emerged. And I think it kind of indicates that that creativity, as everyone's been saying, comes on its own. It's more like something coming up through the bricks or the concrete at the bottom than it is squeezing a toothpaste tube. It just doesn't go that way. And Kurska likes to say, if the more you stop thinking about it, the more you stop trying to figure it out, the more it has you. And another one that he said a few weeks ago that has really still got me is, the meaning of your life is just this.
Mm-hmm.
Just this. Because I've noticed that I try to make the meaning, somewhere else, something I should have done, or something I need to do, or something that didn't go right, or whatever. But I just use that again and again to bring myself around during the day to what's really right, right at hand, right in mind, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful.
So I just offer that for that.
Thank you for that. Yeah, a couple of things. We can catch ourselves trying to figure something out. Like, well, maybe you have something you're meant to do, and you're trying to figure it out, and you might stay awake at night, can't sleep. You're trying to figure this out and trying to figure it out. Just maybe like scientists, and then they go out and go swimming in the ocean, and suddenly the idea comes to them. And as I wanted to say that as a teacher, I always have learned this, not to try to figure it out. Even for this talk, I had to just wait, don't try to figure it out, wait.
Mm-hmm.
Because I knew, that eventually I have faith, it's gonna come, okay? It's not me that figured it out. I didn't hammer it out or this and that. And as Mark was saying, that deadline can be a pressure. The pressure works for me in life to have that. But just this in the moment. I think that's beautiful, a beautiful way to look at what is important in life. What are we meant to do? This.
Because you can't do it yesterday and you can't do it tomorrow, because they either were just this or they're going to be just this.
Yeah.
So you won't miss anything.
We can certainly create narratives, this happened back when I was a lonely teenager, and so on. And they're narratives created with our imagination, connecting dots. But isn't it beautiful? Isn't it luscious to be here now in this moment?
Thank you.
Thank you, Wesley. I see Ken Paul's hand up on my screen. I was hoping to hear from you, Ken.
Yeah, I've been waiting. Thank you for the lead and the poetry, and I really enjoyed this session a lot.
I was hoping to see you today. You are an artist. You've talked a little bit about art in your life and how it has been you. So I was hoping to
Well, like you, I've received a paycheck for many years for supposedly teaching art. And I realized, you know, I never taught anybody anything. Learning took place, but I didn't transfer it. You know, the best I can say about that is that I was sort of responsible for setting up a situation in which this dynamic could take place. And being like a printmaker, mostly, I paint too, but I have some like physical means through which there's a medium through which you know, learning and instruction could take place. And so anyway, so I don't know anything. The older I get, the less I know. But going back to the statement that creativity can only happen in the now, and this implies very strongly to me that spontaneity is involved, and spontaneity, to my way of thinking, is a response to situations.
Yes.
And did I choose that situation that I need to be responding in? Well, I can tell myself I did, but it's not really clear that really has been true. And some of my best ideas took place like despite me. I hear people talking about getting ideas in the shower or jogging or driving the car or whatever. You know, whenever the inner censor is not on duty, things can just kind of flow in. And just in terms of the current situation, my creative activity has been ongoing. I've been retired for a number of years. And so that structure, that support structure that used to surround me, you know, and my colleagues and peers and students, that was taken away. And so I had to, you know, I just sort of had to push on with it. You know, so people are talking about an external goal or a impetus. So, well, there's also an internal one that it's a little harder to talk about. I suppose I do creative things because I don't have a choice. I mean, that just happens. And the COVID-19 thing has been probably less disruptive to me than it is to a lot of other people, because my routine has really not changed that much. I still have, you know, I do things I don't know how to do. Somebody was talking about, you know, how can you just do something you have no idea about how you do that, you know, and music composition is one. I was listening to that one. I don't know how to do that, but I've been doing it on and off. That's more sporadic to me. But one of the things I really discovered that about myself is that I'm not a poet. I can't write poetry. Although,
wait a minute.
Well, you know, I can't write poetry. So anyhow.
Okay, I got you. Yeah.
So I don't know. It's life is still worth getting up for in the morning, and I have no idea what's. You know, when I work in the studio, I don't really start with an idea. Mostly, I get in there and start making a mess, and the mess kind of speaks to me. Well, you need to edit this out. You know, I mean, I think there's a construct aspect to creativity, and destruction was talked about earlier, and sometimes you have to destroy something in order to be creative, and so that's a paradox.
The phoenix rises out of the ashes.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, I really appreciate the session, and I realize that our diversity is our unity. So that's.
Thank you for that. That's great. You know, you're talking about spontaneity. Personally, as a writer and as a teacher, I have loved not knowing. You know, there's something kind of, if you could really get into this, except not knowing, it's like so enlivening and interesting. So many times I have gone to the classroom door and walked into that room not knowing what I would say, but trusting that I would respond. Spontaneity, I would respond. Or you see a situation happening, I would respond. So there's something beautiful about that. And also your comment about never really teaching anybody, never taught anybody anything. And isn't that true? I mean, but being in the presence of someone, I mean, that can influence. So your students have been influenced by the energy that flows through you, the energy that flows through them. It's a beautiful thing. Thank you.
I was taught a lot more by them than I think the other way around.
Yes, right. The same here.
And when Ken was talking just now, and he said something about, you know, I start out in the morning and I just create a mess. And I had been thinking already about if anybody's ever seen the film of Jackson Pollock creating this painting. Talk about an apparent mess, you know. And the guy went so fast. There was no deliberation whatsoever. I mean, he was the picture of spontaneity. And I'm thinking maybe I heard this from Tom McFarlane, could verify, but apparently there's been some artificial intelligence computer modeling, attempting to create, you know, things that have paintings that have the same genius as Jackson Pollock's by doing fractal analysis and all this stuff. And machines can't do it. Mm-hmm. Nobody can duplicate what he did, even though to the untrained, the non-artistic eye, it does look like a big splattered mess. But I think that's a great example. And I also was thinking about how the Beatles captured the attention of the world and held it for a number of years, but it was only during the time that they were still having fun with each other doing what they did. And when that sort of dried up, they kind of moved on. I mean, they're still great musicians, but that magic, you know, was only there because they weren't worried about what they were creating. They were just having fun. That's my little statement.
Thank you for that, Vip. And you're talking about Jackson Pollock going in and creating. I can remember seeing the film of, it was like a paint can swinging back and forth and this sort of thing. But it reminds me of what we have done in our writing workshops, Vip. When I plant an idea, I give you 3 minutes to write, and you don't have time to calculate or figure it out. You just, where does that come from? How do you do that? And you read your example for this group here. It's amazing. It's a beautiful thing. Thank you for that. Thank you, Vip. And so I see that there are no more hands up. And so it's 12:34. So I would like to end by reading or giving to you a prayer. First, I'd like to thank Tom McFarlane. Tom, I don't see your face up there, but thank you so much for helping us do this. Yesterday, I was communicating back and forth with Tom to set this up. I was going to have the readers, and could we have some music? And it's just a wonderful service that you're doing, Tom. And it's great to get to know you this way. So thank you for that. So I'll end with this prayer. O Divine Mother, let us be instruments of your creativity. May we arise each morning to receive our spiritual sustenance with love in our hearts and the desire to help each other. May we align with the flow of your oceanic creativity, which is every flower in every garden, the paint on every artist's brush, and the song in every person's heart. May we choose positivity instead of negativity and see with clarity the ways to support loving kindness and peace in our world, now and forever. Thank you, everyone. It's been my pleasure.